Railblazer at California's Great America is an insane ride experience. It's absolutely ridiculous. And for a long time, it was my favorite roller coaster in California. I got to ride this attraction for the first time in 2019, and I rode it 5 times, I believe, including one front row night ride. This summer, I got up there for 3 days, technically 4, like 3.1 days, and I got 12 rides on Railblazer over that amount of time. So I have a much better feel for this attraction now, and I'm super excited to dive into this with you. In 2019, I actually got to ride the clone of this attraction before I rode Railblazer. I visited Six Flags Fiesta Texas in April of 2019, and I rode Golden Lasso Coaster before I rode Railblazer. Unfortunately, I only got 2 laps in on Golden Lasso Coaster, and I have not been back to Fiesta Texas since, but I've obviously gotten a great number of rides on Railblazer. That more than makes up for it. The biggest difference, in my opinion, between these 2 rides is the fact that you can basically walk all the way around Railblazer. You can get so many different views of this thing, which is awesome for me. I loved walking around it and filming it. It was just so much fun to watch. This ride is super visually appealing, especially when you can get a whole bunch of different angles. At Fiesta Texas, you can basically just get the one angle of Golden Lasso Coaster that you've probably seen a million times with the sign in front of it. But that ride is also super picturesque. To start things off, let's talk about these trains and the station. Unfortunately, unlike every other RMC Raptor, Railblazer does not have a moving loading station, which kind of sucks, but the operators are super efficient, and there's like 3 or 4 of them for an 8-car train, which is kind of insane. So they can dispatch them very quickly, but you know, it only takes one guest to delay an entire train by 30 seconds or a minute, and that can add up over time. This crew was rolling trains even without the moving loading station, which is super cool. I'm super proud of them. They're doing great. So the restraints for this ride, they're actually different from the restraints on Flight of Courage, which I didn't even remember from 2019. This year, I've obviously gotten a bunch of laps on Flight of Courage since that's much closer to my home. So getting back up to Railblazer, I was like, oh wow, this is actually totally different. The biggest difference, in my opinion, is that there's the little straps that you have to put your head through. There's basically like half as much headroom to get in and out. It was kind of uncomfortable pulling the restraint down and pulling it back up, especially because maybe, I don't know, maybe I just have a big head, but fitting through, getting my head through that was kind of annoying. Like on the first day I rode Railblazer, I think it was my second ride in the morning, I was leaning forward when the restraint came up. My face basically hit a strap on the ride, and for whatever reason the straps create like an X that sits on your stomach while you're riding, so when it pops up it gets really close to your face, and like I basically kissed that thing, which was super disgusting. Yeah, that was gnarly, because I'm sure I'm not the only person who's done that before, so I wanted to like take a shower in hand sanitizer after that. That was super uncomfortable, and they seem super unnecessary, so I'm not even sure why it's there. It's really annoying. I'm glad that Flight of Courage doesn't have them, but like, why do you still have them on Railblazer? Just like snip them off or something. They seem to serve no real purpose, so it's like annoying. Like, why? And other than that, the restraints, the bottom portion is kind of like a hard plastic seatbelt, and then if you pull on it, the tops of your shoulders can come into contact with basically a soft seatbelt. So it was pretty interesting, the differences in textures there. For the most part, I'm pretty sure that your shoulders are in contact with the protected seatbelt, like the hard plastic. It doesn't hurt necessarily, it's just kind of annoying. But when you experience those super sharp airtime moments, the soft seatbelt extends out of the car itself, and it allows you to float up out of your seat, which is super cool. So it's not restrictive, it just kind of touches you, which is basically exactly what I said about the Flight of Courage review. By the way, in Flight of Courage, I forgot to mention this during that video, but I had problems with the shoulder straps basically like sliding off my shoulders, especially during the turnaround and the dive loop. That was really weird because I have never had that problem on this ride. I don't know if that's because of the different restraint design or what. If your shoulder straps are literally sliding off of my shoulder during the ride experience, that they gotta be obsolete. Like, what's even the point? The restraint is falling off during the ride and it doesn't impact my safety. What's the point of having it, you know? So that's just super bizarre. And I've heard other people have the same problem with Flight of Courage, but I've never had that happen to me on Railblazer. Alright, that's enough talking about these restraints. Going up the lift hill is super nice. You have a cool view. You can see the 49er Stadium and most of Great America. You hit a left turn, which is you actually pick up a good amount of speed, and then you hit this amazing drop. Oh my gosh, the back row, you get thrown. It's like it's kind of ridiculous how powerful it is. It's 90 degrees. It's a vertical drop. It's awesome. It's spectacular. It's definitely a highlight of the ride experience. You get thrown out of your seat. If you're in the front row, you get some light floater about halfway down the drop, which is super fun. As I said, I got 12 laps on Railblazer this year, and I only got to ride the front row twice. And both of my front row rides were in the morning. And I'm just gonna jump into this right now. Railblazer was a lot moodier than I remembered. Like it was running kind of slow in the morning, and it really speeds up. Oh my gosh, like I just had to give it like a couple hours, and by the time I came back to it, it was hauling. So if you show up right at opening, you're not gonna get full Railblazer, which I don't really remember that happening in 2019. That might have been the case, but I'm not entirely sure. In 2019, I got a front row night ride on this thing, and that was absolutely bonkers, but because it was so long ago, I don't remember the specifics of the forces. I just remember like intensely graying out at one point of the ride, which I'll discuss later, but I don't remember the specifics in relation to airtime or the first drop, you know. So yeah, after the first drop, which is incredible, probably my favorite part of the ride, but there's so many amazing parts of this layout. So let's dig into the dive loop. Oh my gosh. It's even more intense than the one on Flight of Courage. You get absolutely thrown out of your seat. It's ridiculous how much airtime you get on an inversion. It's like, it defies all logic, but it's incredible. Probably one of my favorite inversions of all time. Like, oh my gosh. It's incredible ejector airtime, and then you get whipped down. It's insane. Like, even in the back row, you get crazy airtime before you get pulled down upside down. It's just crazy. So after that spectacular inversion, you are thrown into the off-axis airtime hill. This element is super powerful and it's super out of control, so if you're really into that type of thing, this will probably be your favorite moment of the ride. I got a bunch of laps on this thing in the back row. When it's moving pretty fast in the afternoon or evening, you'll get crazy airtime. You'll get thrown up into your shoulder straps. But my problem with this element is when the laterals shift right when you're coming back down, I get thrown into the right side of the train, and it kind of hurt a couple times. It wasn't incredibly painful. It was just kind of bothering me, and especially because I had my camera in my pocket, which probably wasn't the smartest idea, but whatever. So yeah, that was a little uncomfortable. It's still an insane moment, and it's absolutely breathtaking, so it's not that big of a deal, but it's just a minor complaint, and something worth noting, in my opinion. So after that, you curve up into the most intense part of the ride. This is where I got my insane gray out in the front row in 2019. That's like the most vivid memory I have of that ride. Like, oh my gosh, it's so powerful. This year, I didn't really get a gray out as intense as that, because unfortunately I visited Great America on the last week of daily operation, so they closed early and I didn't get to stick around for Friday or Saturday. So I did not get a night ride on Railblazer this year, but that's fine. It's still ridiculously powerful, and I grayed out multiple times during it. It's just crazy. The G's don't even feel that strong. It's just, obviously there are G's and there are laterals, and my vision just like turns gray. It's just like shocking how fast it happens. And then you hit the S bend in every row. It's pretty much the only point in this layout where you can like breathe, which is super fun. Because right after that, you're thrown into another ridiculous airtime moment, especially in the back row. You get crazy pull. Oh my gosh. You get thrown back into your shoulder straps. And if you're like me, I rode this thing 5 times in one day. Obviously by that point, like on my 5th ride on my 2nd day, when I hit that element, you know, my shoulders are kind of tired. You know, I'll tolerate that for that awesome airtime. It's so much fun. After that amazing airtime moment, the third airtime moment on this insane layout, well, 4th if you count the dive loop, you hit the cutback, and the cutback is basically the only dead spot on this layout. It kind of feels like an overbank. There's nothing special about it. It's definitely my second least favorite part of this layout. It's fine, you know, you just kind of whiz through it. and then it's like, all right, what's next, you know? Like, up to this point, every element was insane, and this is the only one on the ride that's kind of After that, you're thrown directly into a corkscrew, and I don't understand the physics of this thing because you get some nice hang time even when the ride is hauling. Like in the morning, you get even better hang time because, as I said, it doesn't run as fast in the morning. Even in my late afternoon and evening rides, I was getting hang time, like a little pop of it, like a little pop of weightlessness. It's like, I don't even understand how that works. It's because you fly through it. It's insane. You also get a nice head chopper with that rock work that's right there during the corkscrew. I think it's more noticeable at this point in the ride than when you go through it after the first drop, which is kind of funny. After that, you hit the overbank, and this is where you get like a pretty noticeable rattle. It's not painful, it's just you can feel your seat shaking a little bit, especially towards your feet, which is kind of weird. But yeah, that's definitely the roughest part of the ride. But it's over in a flash, and then you pop up into the brake run. You get another pop of airtime, especially if you're in the front. I wouldn't say it's very intense, and it's not that notable, but you know, it's there. Towards the back, you don't really get anything though. Every time I hit this brake run, I'm like out of breath. I was like in shock. I was like, oh my gosh, man, this thing is absolutely ridiculous. This is an insane layout. This layout is bonkers. This ride was in my top 10 for a long time. After this year's rides, I felt like I had to drop it because the shoulder straps were more problematic than I remember. But I've been thinking about it. I might put it back up there. I don't know. This ride's incredible. I still think it's my favorite roller coaster in California. It's ridiculous. I mean, it is pretty short, but I got so many laps on it that I don't really care. You know, if it was even longer, I feel like it might have been too much for people because it's like 30 seconds of insanity. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. My favorite airtime moment is probably the first drop because it feels the most sustained and it's the most comfortable, but I don't deny that the off-axis hill is probably the most insane and out of control. But because it is the most uncomfortable, I do prefer the drop off of the S-bend over the off-axis hill. But all three of these are incredible. They're amazing airtime moments, and they're better than basically the best airtime moment on like every other coaster, including Gold Striker. Oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts on Gold Striker. Those are for another day though. But this ride is absolutely incredible. It is by far the best roller coaster in California's Great America. It's by far the best coaster in NorCal, and I'm pretty sure it's my favorite roller coaster in California. That's tough to say though. I'm definitely team SoCal, so I'm a little reluctant to give the crown to a coaster up there. But this ride is ridiculous. It's so much fun. As for inversions, my favorite inversion is definitely the dive loop because it's just bonkers, off the wall, insane. You get airtime on an inversion, powerful airtime. It's way better than the dive loop on Flight of Courage. The corkscrew is my second favorite inversion because you float through it. It's really fun, especially in the morning. During the morning rides, it was probably the highlight of those experiences. And then my least favorite is the cutback, but probably could have guessed that. There's the only dead spot in this layout, in my opinion, is the cutback. The overbank is definitely the most rattly. I didn't really notice a rattle throughout the rest of the layout. It was just that overbank. But it's so short and it's basically like the end of the ride that I don't really care that much. So yeah, the biggest flaw in my opinion is getting in and out of the restraint. Like during the ride, they didn't bother me too much. It was only after significant re-rides that it kind of became a problem. So this ride is absolutely incredible. Please come out and ride it before CGA closes. I really hope that this ride is saved. I feel like it would be awesome at King's Dominion. That's who I'm rooting for to get it, because at Knott's this ride would have a 3-hour line constantly. So I don't want it down here. Please send it to King's Dominion. Keep this ride alive. Please do not demolish this incredible attraction. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna be sad to see it leave California if CGA ends up biting the bullet, but you know, hoping for the best. I hope CGA pulls through. But you know, that's a discussion for another day. Railblazer is an incredible ride and you have to go out and ride it. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you later.